Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex Paul from InvestorStream, and I'll be your host today. Presenting for you today is Lindian Resources CEO, Alistair Stevens, who will be discussing the company's near-term project development programs following the shareholder-approved acquisition of the globally significant Kangankunde Rare Earths Project in Malawi. Alistair will give a short presentation on this progress and will be on hand to address any questions following the presentation. I understand the presentation is available on the ASX. However, you can also download a copy of the presentation by navigating to the handouts pane in the control panel. A copy of the webinar will also be available on Lindian's website and social media platforms later today. But for now, I'd like to throw it over to Alistair to kick things off for us. Alistair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alex, and welcome everyone to an update on this webinar presentation on Lindian's assets. You would have known from historically that Lindian has had bauxite assets in Guinea, and they are particularly good assets. I'll touch on those assets towards the end of the presentation. And recently, the shareholder approved acquisition of the great Kangankunde Rare Earth Project in Malawi. I'm going to focus on that as the first part of the presentation. Let me first start with the corporate overview. We have 868 million shares on issue and 15 million performance rights. There's 99.86 million options on issue. About half of those options are due to expire at the end of this month. They're well and truly in the money at 2 cents, and that will net the company about $1 million in this coming month. Market capitalization is about $175 million. We did two historic placements at premiums. When we were 6 cents, we did a $2 million placement at 10 cents. When we were 13.5 cents, we did a $3 million placement at 20 cents. Share price has risen to about 35 cents. We've softened recently down to around 20. We have a good board, a great supportive board between Mr. Kabunga, Mr. Ocello, and Mr. Fazio, who have got some fantastic experiences commercially and technically. So the top 20 shareholders control about 70% of this stock. So for the next slide, there's an overview of the assets that we have. So the rare earth asset, which has just been approved by shareholders, which is the Kangankunde Rare Earth Project, I think is the world's best undeveloped rare earth project. And I'll step through that presentation and explain why. Not only is it geologically fantastic with size and grade and great metallurgy, it's also close to some fantastic infrastructure. It's on a mining license, so it has a short runway to being a major supplier of mineral concentrate. In our bauxite assets, we have 1 billion tonnes of high quality bauxite resources in Guinea, access to road and rail facilities and deep port facilities, and it is generally commercially shovel ready for production. Next slide, please. So why do bauxite and rare earths fit together? And some shareholders have been asking me, is it logical that they are a match in commodity wise? And I think they are. A current conventional vehicle contains about 30 to 40 kilograms of aluminium, and the new EV vehicles, electric cars, have about 190 kilos. The reason for the reduction in steel is needed in the conventional vehicles to support the weight of the engine and the gearbox. The electric vehicle has a different configuration structurally, and it needs that lightweight strength material to create energy efficiencies for the battery and the rare earth magnets. So bauxite's a fundamental feedstock for the growth in the alumina industry into the EV market, which each car will consume about 190 kilos. So that's a fivefold increase of alumina need in the EV market, as well as the rare earth minerals. So that's why I think these two commodities fit together logically. Next slide, please. Kangankunde, most people have trouble pronouncing the name, so I've just nicknamed it the King, because I think one day it will become the King. It's a major resource in terms of potential size and grade and quality. It's a carbonatite rare earth oxide. There's many grades. About the lowest grade we've seen in the carbonatite itself is about 0.5%, consistently between 1 and 24%. It's a well understood asset with significant historical work, and we know that there's metallurgical test work that proves that it can get 60% concentrate grade for 60% recovery. It's close to established infrastructure of road, power, water and rail. Next slide, please. It's licensed. Kangankunde has 3 licenses, both the environmental and social impact assessment certificate for approval for a mine site. It has an exploration license surrounding the mining license and has mining license MML0290 issued at the beginning of this year. So it's fully licensed to become a mining operation. Next, please. Now, I'd like to focus on these next 2 slides because this will give you an insight into the potential size and dimension of the resource we're dealing with. The purple zone on the left hand is a plan view of the carbonatite. So the black squiggle is underground adits that a French company called BRGM put in the 1990s. The total length of that purpley zone is about 650 meters on the long axis and about 400 meters on the east-west axis. And that entire zone is mineralized with monazite mineralization. It has consistent grades of monazite and rare earth mineralization through the whole deposit. Around the outside, that brown mottled zone is a mixed zone of host rock breccia and carbonatite material, and there's pods of carbonatite within that too. You can see on the left-hand side there's some purpley zones. So we understand that it's surrounded by this lower grade carbonatite breccia. We would anticipate that that carbonatite mineralization is consistent down to about 1 kilometre in depth, and I'll explain that in the next slide. One of the things that's profoundly interesting about this deposit is the size of the monazite mineralization. So the arrow there points to a place where we located this outcrop with the geological hammer in the middle, and the arrow points to a pod of monazite crystal growth, which is about 10 to 15 centimeters in diameter. And each one of those crystals you can see in that diagram is about the size of your small finger. That is quite 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters in size. This is particularly coarse grain material. And in the photograph on the right, and then outside this breccia zone is this yellow zone, which is an alteration halo, which we believe contains no mineralization. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, so I've now annotated the drill program on the diagram to the left on top of the geology to give you an idea of the placement of drill pads and drill holes. So the red drill holes is the current phase 1 drill program, which consists of 10,000 meters of RC drilling and 2,500 meters of diamond drilling. There's 2 long, deep purple holes there, purple drill traces. They're both 1 kilometre holes, so one drilling across the complex east-west and one drilling down the long axis from the north to the south. So if you look at the cross section on the left, on the right, you'll actually see the red traces in section, and they're all 300-metre holes, and you see the design of these holes to identify the carbonatite and rare earth mineralization, and some of them go out into the breccia zone. Then you can see the drill trace of the purple zone, which is a deep hole which goes down quite deep into the carbonatite complex. We would anticipate at a minimum there will be an exploration target resource out of this drill program based on this pattern design and the depths of the drilling. We hope that it may also qualify for an inferred resource, and that will be dependent on resource analysis and the statistical consistency of grades and rock types through this mineralized zone. Just to give you a scope I expect that the entire purple zone will be mineralisation of somewhere around 2%. It might go 3% on average. And to give you an insight into the nature of the potential size of the resource, if we would extend that purple mineralisation down to 500 metres, there's approximately 250 million tonnes of mineralisation in that dimension. So the purple phase 2 drill program would then identify an exploration target resource below that potential inferred resource, down to a depth of say 800 metres. Then there's the low grade halo around the outside, and we suspect there's probably around about 250 million tonnes of additional low grade mineralisation as a halo around the surface 250 million tonnes of carbonatite. So they're all estimates at this point in time. That's what we're designing in this program, so identify that volume of material and the consistency and the tenor of grade within the mineralisation in the carbonatite and the breccia zone. So sum up, we are on to a giant. So I've nicknamed Kangankunde the King for a good reason. I think it is. I think we're going to see some exceptional results coming out of this drill program. It's extraordinarily exciting. This is the first drill program since 1994. No meaningful exploration or metallurgical test work has happened on this project in almost 30 years. And we're about to be on the cusp of defining something genuinely great that could potentially have a significant production of rare earths over more than decades, probably 100 years worth of resources here. So this is why I think it has potential to be a game changer in terms of its ability to supply material for independence of rare earth supply outside China. Now, there's one more thing that is absolutely fantastic about this project, and that's the next slide. Not only do we have a resource which is potentially extraordinarily large, of grade that is significantly high, it contains no radiation. This is a sample of the rock you saw in the previous slide. It's got a thorium grade of 28 ppm, a uranium grade of 2 ppm, which means at 2 ppm, you're almost at the limit of assay reliability there. It's almost like there's no uranium grade whatsoever. And when you measure the radiation dose, it's 0.28 microsieverts. That means it's lower than the average radiation of a person. Payenza says a glass of water in Australia should have less than 0.3 millisieverts, and the humble banana at 0.1 millisieverts is there on the radiation scale as well, although bananas come from potassium, different source. So this is an extraordinary low radiation deposit with coarse grain mineralogy, likely to achieve exceptionally high grades of recovery, with a resource of such significance that it could be around for centuries, supplying rare earths at a magnitude of scale that will give us independence. And that sets the scene for one of the best and lowest environmental footprint deposits in the world in terms of rare earths. So that's what really excites me about this project. Size, grade, recovery, no radiation. Exceptional. Next slide, please. Our drill program has commenced. The guys are on site taking samples at the moment, and by the end of this week, we would hope to have 1 or 2 holes ready for dispatch for laboratory sample preparation. We'll also commence our metallurgical sampling this month. We hope that initial assays from the drilling will start to flow mid-December. That's an optimistic time frame at this point in time. It'll certainly be before the end of December, and we'd have a continuous flow of drill results right through January, February and March next year. We would then anticipate modelling all that data and determining whether we have an inferred mineral resource category estimate or an exploration target classification in the second quarter of next year, along with publication of our initial metallurgical results. The wet season in Malawi goes from towards the end of December right through to the end of March. The 2 deep holes we're planning, we might be able to continue those through the wet season. It'll depend on what the access is like to site. But after the wet season, we'd like to recommence drilling on a smaller zone to infill drilling so that we can improve on the initial resource estimate into a full-blown mineral resource estimate in the fourth quarter of next year. So there'll be further drill hole assay results in the third quarter next year. And we would also hope to have enough data to be able to construct, design a flow sheet for a demonstration plant. So in the second half of next year, a small demonstration plant producing, at a guess at this point in time, anything between 1,000 to 5,000 tonnes of rare earth mineral concentrate, hopefully commissioned in 2024. We know that plant won't be perfectly optimized. We know that we'll get better than 60% recovery. We can replicate some of the old flow sheet designs and get a 60% recovery. Our target is to improve that recovery to something better. That would be the goal of the initial metallurgical test work programs plus the demonstration plant. That then leads us to designing a full-scale plant in the 2024 year for construction in 25, and that will then match in with our marketability of our concentrate through to customers and the promotion of the product as a large-scale viable source of monazite mineral concentrate that doesn't contain radiation. Next slide, please. We've done a lot of effort in communicating at all levels within the Malawi community, from the local villages through the local district councils, through members of parliament, through the mines ministry, and through the Australian government, through the ambassador rules in Zimbabwe. We've met positive feedback all the way. We've clearly explained what we're going to do with the project, how we're going to engage, and what the benefits this mine will provide local community and Malawi as a government in general. So on the top right-hand side there is the area village chief, Makalela, who's a delightful lady. And down the bottom is myself with the Minister of Mines, Minister Mwala, and to his right, Chief Chantunya, who's the traditional area senior chief up near towards the town of Balaka. It's been a delight being able to communicate, engage with the local communities, because it's been very positive all the way, and very proud that they are endorsing our programs holistically. Next, please. Now for the bauxite assets, there's 1 billion tonnes of bauxite resources in our Guinea operations. Gawal has 105 million tonnes at 49% bauxite grade, Al2O3, which can be upgraded to a 59% Al23 grade and a 2% silica. That is one of the most astounding, rare, high-grade, low impurity deposits in the world. It is an outstandingly fantastic project, and there's been significant interest by parties with interest to purchase product from the Gawal project. We expect that would somehow precipitate into a commercial arrangement next year. That's our goal for that project. Luluma is a larger tonnage, 900 million tonne project with 45% alumina, which is a very good grade, 2% silica, very low silica, very low deleterious element content. So it's a particularly good asset. A little bit further away from infrastructure than Gawal. So you'd have a staged production logically with these projects, with Gawal being the first off the rank, Luluma potentially second, and Woola is a little bit low in grade, but could be supplementary feed to a feedstock from the lower Luluma and Gawal projects. It's very simple screening and bulk handling processes, and nicely located near some great logistical infrastructure, both road, rail, and access to port handling facilities. Next, please. So I say the short-term goal for Gawal would be our goal to commercialise that in the short term. Luma would be medium term, Woola longer term. Thank you. Next. So in summary, the title here, positioned to be the forefront of the green revolution. Malawi Kangankunde Rare Earths, the King project, I think is the world's largest undeveloped rare earth project that will supply large volumes of high grade, good quality, low radiation monazite mineral as a feedstock for independence on the rare earth supply chain outside China. It's got potentially being extremely large scale, long-term asset, low environmental footprint, close to power, which is all hydropower, road, rail, port, water supply. It's, you know, ideally located. We're so lucky that this project has got such great access to infrastructure. And it's on a mining license, and that's not to be underestimated because that allows us to fast track this project into production. As I say, with the demonstration plant, we can sell that concentrate. So we're in a good position to be actually producing in 2024. And then our bauxite assets, as I've just mentioned, 1 billion tonnes of high quality bauxite resources, critical to the alumina supply chain. So both commodities feed into high growth industry, which is the EV market. And I should not understate the potential for the wind turbines and solar farms and all the other technologies that are helping us reduce our environmental footprint across the globe. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. There are supplementary slides after this presentation, which I won't go through and talk at this presentation. They're there for your information to refer to. But I'd like to hand it back to the host now for potential questions and answers.
Thanks, Alistair. Yes, you're quite right. We've had a number of questions come through over the course of the webinar, and I also want to acknowledge a lot of questions have been submitted prior, which is greatly appreciated. To start, Alistair, you've reported that Kangankunde has a small 2004 JORC compliant resource with good grades. What gives you the confidence that you can grow this into a substantial resource and the mineralisation extends?
That resource was determined in the 1990s, and the project went into a hiatus, and because there was a flood of rare earths into the market in the 90s, which then reduced the prices of rare earth minerals pricing across the globe and put this project into a hiatus. When we look back through the data that BRG did, they had a 4% cutoff grade for the mineral resource determination. So it was 2.5 million tonnes at 4.2%. What we saw in the drill traces in the old BRG data was that outside those 4% cutoffs, there was mineralisation through the whole hole in the whole carbonatite, ranging at a minimum from 0.5% all the way up to grades as high as 6%. And that led us to the conclusion that mineralisation wasn't localised geologically by these 4% halos. It was constrained technically or geostatistically by 4%. And that the carbonatite itself is all mineralised in rare earth product. So we haven't got those historic records. We haven't got the data. Sorry, we have the historic records. We don't have the data. So the discovery of the data can only be done through the BRGM records, and our ability to rely on those records as being reliable information, which we think it is. So it's been able to allow us to have a quick step up program to recommence resource definition. So when we went to site, we actually saw the drill collars that the BRGM had done, and each collar had a cement plinth with the whole number and the date written on it. In all the trenches that they've done, you'll be able to see sample locations and sample numbers. So we were able to trace back from those records right back to site and say, this is this drill hole, and this drill hole in this record did this, and this is this trench, and here's all these sample numbers, and here's all the grade across the trench. That gives us a lot of reliability that these drill hole programs that we've designed are going to be extremely successful. So that's, we think we now can improve on that resource into something substantially larger. And that's what gives us such confidence this project can be stepped up so quickly into production.
So how much drilling do you think you need to do to define an exploration target?
So I think that means an exploration target resource. It means enough information to provide reliability around an exploration resource rather than qualify as a inferred resource by JORC. this drill program is more than enough to be able to supply that. We hope that it's enough to actually provide us information for an inferred mineral resource, but we'll get to that towards the end of next year when we see the outcomes, or the end of the first quarter of next year, when we see the outcomes of the assays and understand the geological and data continuity of all the results.
Alistair, could you use any of the historical drill data to more rapidly define a 2012 JORC compliant resource?
I don't believe we can use the data. There's a bit of a debate with some individuals. You might be able to use it, but I don't think you can. I don't think we should. I don't think we will. But it is enough information to allow us to define what, in our current programs, a potential 2012 JORC resource.
So you mentioned the low radiation at Kangankunde and how that was one of the key selling points, if you like, of the project itself. Can you just explain the commercial benefits of having very low radiation over projects? Can you just explain the commercial benefit of having very low radiation over projects that don't have that characteristic?
Yeah, I'd like to also point out that the low radiation level of Kangankunde has been recorded since about the 1950s. So it's consistent in every report that we see, whether it be an academic or a commercial report. And we're seeing that now with our current assays. This means that this material can be upgraded from an ore into a mineral concentrate, which goes about 60% rare earths, which would have a radiation level lower than the current limits for the class 7 goods classification. So it means that it can be shipped around the globe as a general good. It also means that it will be compliant to shipping into places which have tough environmental compliances around the importation of radioactive materials. Of course, the main issue is a lot of rare earth deposits have elevated radiation, and therefore that radiation is a waste product out of downstream processing, which then becomes a waste management issue, both not only radiation for communities, but radiation contamination in the environment. The fact that Kangankunde has such low radiation means that a lot of those environmental compliance issues are much easier managed. It's a much more marketable material, and it's much more broadly marketable. It also means we can supply mineral concentrate. We don't have to go into a separation facility. You might have to, in some projects, have to have a separation facility before radiation, because of radiation management issues. So this allows the project a lot more flexibility for a low risk, low capital mineral concentrate producer.
Thanks, Alistair. Now, we've had a couple of questions around peer comparisons. One question was regarding the difference between Kangankunde and the Songwe Hills project guided by Mkango Resources. I thought you might be able to just discuss more broadly, how does Kangankunde stack up in comparison to its peers?
Geometrically, Kangankunde appears to be a lot more coherent. It appears to be an oval-shaped pipe with consistent carbonatite throughout that pipe. Songwe Hill looks to be a little bit more dislocated from the geometry that I've seen from some of the publications. The main difference is that Songwe Hill is an apatite and another rare earth mineral called synchosite, which is an odd name, which is a cerium-rich phosphate. And all their rare earth mineralization, which they say is heavies or NdPr dominant in the apatite, is located in the apatite, and therefore it requires a different process flow sheet. Apatite has about the same density as many of the other carbonatite minerals, so it has to go through a flotation process. It'll be a grind size to liberate the apatite, and then chemicals used for flotation. By comparison, Kangankunde has a monazite rare earth mineral. The difference there is that monazite has a density of around about 5.5 compared to all the other carbonatite and apatite minerals, which are about 3 to 3.3. That means we can use gravity separation. So we don't need to use chemicals, we can just use water. We'd probably have a coarser grind size because the mineralogy is quite coarse. The monazite crystals are very coarse grained. So we go crush a coarse grind into a spiral with water. We'd probably put some shaking tables and some other processing techniques down the back of that, which might be things called Moseley drums, which is like a washing machine tipped on its side, doing a spin cycle, or a WIMS, which will be able to cover the monazite out from any other contaminants or gangue minerals. So that means we would be dominantly a water treatment process at this point in time. And certainly the flow sheet that Lonhro did and BRGM backed up was purely water only separation techniques. So that means we'd have an extremely low environmental footprint compared to Songway Hill in terms of our chemical footprint.
So how is your interpretation of the historical exploration data shaping your own approach to the program, and what are you doing differently?
The historic data has allowed us to step up into a brownfields project rather than an exploration project, and it's also got flow sheet metallurgical test work which allows us to step up and step in very quickly. So it has shaped our thought processes quite distinctly. There's an underground adit which gives us access to underground material where the BRGM took bulk samples. So there's a plan to actually rehabilitate that for drilling programs. We find the historic data has been reliable in context, and it's also been discoverable because, as I said, we can find the drill hole locations, we can see the sample numbers in trenches, we can visibly see monazite mineralization on the surface, which gives us a lot of confidence about our current program.
And what other approvals are required to construct a plant?
None really. We have the ESIA, the Environmental and Social Impact Assessment Certificate. We have our mining license, which grants us a process plant up to 1.5 million tonne per annum in capacity. There are other, not approvals, but authorizations we need, which would be a road, a power line and water, and that's about it. So there's a 3 kilometre road to site. There's probably a 4 kilometre power line from the high voltage step down power lines, and access to water by constructing a water dam. But the mining license basically gives us the majority of those approvals already in place. So it's a very quick, easy step up process.
So just moving to funding, Alistair, now you've stated in previous announcements that you have a number of funding options. Presumably one is with industry participants and end users. How do you convince them now that the resource is there when you don't yet have a comprehensive MRE?
True, and that's what this drill program needs to do. I think everyone sees that the historic information is valuable. What they want to see is a modern, recent feasibility document, if you like, with recent assay results and drill programs, and the understanding that this project has the capacity and size to produce a large amount of rare earths over a long period of time. That's a big selling point within this project, is that a long-term reliable supplier of low radiation or zero radiation and environmentally soft product is going to add a lot of value to the downstream supply chains. So we think that the conversations we've had so far with many end users that are extremely enthusiastic about the project, they want to maintain a dialogue. I think they're just waiting for the outcomes of this drill program.
So clearly the market recognises that you need money. With current funds and option conversions, are you able to actually fund the current program?
As you would have seen from the quarterly report, we've got about $500,000 in the bank. There's $1 million of options converting this month. They're 2-cent options, so they're well and truly within the money. And we've had communication with majority of those option holders that they are going to convert. So we're pretty confident there's some more money coming into the bank at this point in time.
And I guess down the track, Alistair, would you consider selling any of the project?
No, is the short answer to that. We've had a number of offers for potentially joint venturing or joint ownership at the project level, and that's not something we would entertain at this point in time. We would entertain funding arrangements for a plant and an offtake agreement, but we want to maintain control of the mining license and the project in its entirety. We're happy to talk about funding arrangements for a plant associated with offtake agreements, but not participation at the mine site.
Now, Malawi is a bit of an unknown. How do you convince potential financiers and users that this is a stable jurisdiction?
The fact that it's dominantly unknown probably tells you it's a stable jurisdiction by the nature of the question. You know, the other countries that you see that are quite passive, Botswana and Namibia, you don't hear about trouble there. There are countries that are troubled within Africa, and you hear about them a lot. Malawi's not one of them. It's a legal system which is a subsidiary of the English law, has a Westminster system style of parliamentary control. They are extremely peaceful people. There's no violence of any magnitude whatsoever in Malawi. It is a great place to work. The people are genuinely lovely and very friendly. And one of the observations I make is that I think I can count on one hand the number of people I've seen smoke in Malawi. They don't smoke. They are extraordinarily peaceful and lovely. So I think people should be relaxed about Malawi. Some people say it's landlocked, but a lot of landlocked countries have transportation agreements for materials out of the country to ports. That's common within those jurisdictions, and that's what Malawi has. It has access along the railway line to Nacala, or south through South Africa, or north through Tanzania. So I'd tell investors you should be very relaxed about Malawi.
Can you just give us a picture on the government's involvement? How often are you engaging with them, and what's their attitude to the community, and vice versa?
Whenever we are on site, the chairman and I, when we go to Malawi, we always make sure that we see the minister and the relevant authorities in the areas to maintain a dialogue and active relationship with them. And that's an important part of the process. Malawi has two systems in parallel. It's got the parliamentary system, the democratic system of election, members of parliament and ministers. Parallel to that is the traditional system of communities and chiefs. They work together, and you need to make sure you maintain dialogue with both forums. So the community, the local area chief Makalela, the traditional area senior chief Chanthunya represent traditional ownership of communities and peoples. Then there's the Balaka District Council, and then the political system of the state through the ministries. We all keep maintaining dialogue with them on a consistent basis so that there's no surprises. You know, we've told them quite honestly that we're a visitor at the moment. We wish to become a neighbour, but we also wish to become a good neighbour that grows into a long-term friend and an active participant of the community, that we will do our best to make sure we never do wrong. Sometimes things will go wayward, and we'll make sure that we're honest about it and open, and we tell them that we're sorry, and we'll put plans in place to make sure it never happens again. So that gives them comfort that there's an open dialogue of honesty and openness, that they will always know that we are an operating part, but we're also going to be part of the community.
So how are you helping the community, and do you expect any objections from them as works get underway?
We had no objections whatsoever. In fact, we've had exactly the opposite, absolute enthusiasm. that there's a lot of opportunity that will come from this community. Not only just jobs, we've told them there'll be jobs available and preference to local people. There will be professional and some other technical trades that will need to be brought in from other areas, but we'll put in training programs in place so that local community members have the access to upskilling into those roles as quickly as practically as possible. There's community assistant programs left, right and centre out there. We've already helped the police station in a community halfway between Kangankunde and Balaka called Kankau. We intend to sit down with the local area community and discuss community development programs with them and assistance programs and design those programs around their needs and our capability to deliver. So I see that there's an enormous amount of opportunity to help this community, not just from direct involvement with the mine, but indirect involvement by helping them participate in other programs that help them maintain their sustainability over the long term.
Do you have to relocate any communities?
We don't have to relocate communities in that sense, but there are individual houses and village huts, if you like, that will have to be relocated. There's not a lot, and that will also be an outcome of this drill program. From the drilling we've done, we'll be able to understand the nature of the size of the potential open pit and the perimeter of the pit, an exclusion zone around that pit, which will then identify which of those local huts and villages may need to be relocated.
Alistair, are there any NGOs in Malawi, and could they cause you any issues?
Well, of course, there's NGOs. There's NGOs everywhere. I don't think they'll cause us issues because we will gladly create an open forum for those NGOs to be engaged with us on a full-time basis. We'll be completely open and honest about everything we do.
Now, Alistair, just to finish off, we'll just shift to the bauxite. Now, obviously, the bauxite still forms a big part of the company, and you've mentioned it quite significantly in your presentation. Do you still have any third parties interested in the conglomerate bauxite at Guile?
Yes, we do. In fact, there is renewed interest in the Guile project, especially because it has such a potential high grade after screening and such low silica that it is an important feedstock for grade management within alumina processing facilities. So we would expect that enthusiasm to continue in the short term, and as soon as there's something tangible, of course, we'll let shareholders know. But I'm pretty optimistic that something's going to happen to that project in the near term.
Now, you mentioned, I guess, the short, medium and long-term plans for your bauxite deposits. Can you just restate how you see the further development of your bauxite deposits in Guinea? And do you want to bring all three projects into individual production?
The latter part of that question is no. We wouldn't bring them into production together, no. So we'd start with Guile as an initial stage project. I've looked at the project report quite carefully. It's quite low capital and it's simple, shallow mining and screening for transportation to a local stockpile for sale. So it's low capital and it's very good margin material, and that with the project we'd start with. The other projects would be a medium and longer term strategic development opportunity. So there'd be a staged, slow, careful development program around those projects.
Fantastic, Alistair. Well, look, that concludes the Q&A for today. Look, thank you all for joining us today, and I'd also like to thank Alistair for presenting and taking the time to answer some questions. We got through quite a few questions there, which is, I'm sure a lot of you will appreciate. And thank you all for the high level of questions. Apologies if we didn't manage to get to your question, but it shows the high level of engagement among Lindian shareholders. As I mentioned before, a recording of the webinar will be on Lindian's website and social media platforms later today. Alistair, before I let you go, do you have any final comments to leave with us today?
I'd like to ensure all shareholders that the investment they've made within Lindian is a fantastic investment. The capability that we've got within our assets, both the rare earth project in Malawi and the bauxite assets, are absolutely astounding. I'm absolutely delighted to be your CEO and managing this business on your behalf. I see some fantastic growth opportunities for this business, and it'll place itself as a premium company with a fantastic ESG outcome. I will deliver some of my vision around how I will position these projects with an extremely low environmental footprint further in later developments next year. But I just say this is a wonderful investment. Please, I thank you for your support.
Fantastic. Well, look, that wraps it up for us here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alistair, for presenting, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.